You wanted romance. I brought it.
You know what they say about anniversaries? They're like root canals. You dread them, they cost too much money, and afterward you're left wondering why you didn't just pull the whole thing out years ago. My name is Eric Dorsey, and I'm about to tell you how my 15th wedding anniversary nearly became my last day on Earth. Not because of some romantic gesture gone wrong, but because my wife Vanessa decided that, till death do us part, needed a little nudge in the right direction. I should have seen it coming. Heck, maybe I did see it coming, and just chose to ignore it, like I ignored the way she'd started working out obsessively, buying new underwear she never wore around me, and taking phone calls in the bathroom at 2 a.m. But when you've been married 15 years and you're pushing 40 with a receding hairline and a bank account that's more suggestions than actual numbers, you tend to give your attractive wife the benefit of the doubt. Big mistake. It started on a Tuesday morning in suburban Minneapolis. I was sitting at our kitchen table, staring at my laptop screen and pretending to look for security consulting jobs while actually reading about how the Vikings were going to disappoint us again this season. Vanessa breezed in wearing her yoga pants and that sports bra that cost more than my monthly car payment. Her blonde hair pulled back in one of those messy buns that somehow looked perfect. "Eric, honey," she said, and I should have known right there that something was wrong. She only called me honey when she wanted something or when she'd already done something terrible. "I've been thinking about our anniversary." "What about it?" I asked, not looking up from my screen. The Vikings had just traded away their best linebacker. Perfect metaphor for my life. "I want to do something special this year. Really special." She sat down across from me, and I caught a whiff of that expensive perfume she'd started wearing. The kind that screamed, "I'm having an affair," in 17 different languages. "Define special," I said, finally meeting her eyes. They were that particular shade of blue that had made me stupid enough to propose 16 years ago. Still beautiful, but now they reminded me of antifreeze. Pretty, but deadly. "Remember that cabin your uncle left you up in Brainerd? The one we've never used?" I remembered it. A 2-bedroom log cabin on a private lake, surrounded by enough wilderness to hide a body or 3. My Uncle Jack had been a paranoid old coot who'd built the place as his doomsday retreat. It was isolated, no cell service for miles, and the nearest neighbor was a family of bears. What about it? "I think we should spend the weekend there. Just the 3 of us. Chloe would love it, and we could reconnect." She reached across the table and put her hand on mine. Her skin was cold. "When's the last time we really talked, Eric? Really spent time together? When's the last time you didn't flinch when I touched you, I thought but didn't say? When's the last time you looked at me like I was something other than an obstacle between you and whatever it is you really want?" "I don't know, Van. The place has been sitting empty for 2 years. Probably needs a lot of work." "That's okay. We can rough it. It'll be fun." Her smile was bright enough to power the cabin for a week. "Come on, Eric." "For me?" And there it was. The trap, baited and set. All I had to do was walk into it. "All right," I said, because what else was I going to say? "When?" "This weekend. I already talked to Chloe about it. She's excited." Of course she'd already talked to Chloe. My 9-year-old daughter, the only good thing to come out of this marriage, would be thrilled at the chance to spend time with both her parents. Chloe still believed in happy families and fairy tale endings. She still believed her mom and dad loved each other. Smart kid, terrible judge of character. "I'll need to check the place out first," I said. "Make sure the water's working. The generator's functional, you know." "No need. I already sent Tyler up there yesterday to get everything ready." The coffee cup slipped from my hand and shattered on the kitchen floor. Tyler. Coach Tyler Brandt, owner of Elite Fitness, where Vanessa had been spending 12 hours a day for the past 6 months. Tyler with his perfect teeth and his college football stories and his hands that were always finding excuses to adjust Vanessa's form during her workouts. "Tyler?" I managed to keep my voice level. "Why Tyler?" "He offered. He knows about that kind of stuff. Generators, plumbing, outdoor things." She was already getting up to clean the broken cup, not meeting my eyes. "He was happy to help. I'll bet he was." "That was thoughtful of him," I said, and I heard the edge in my own voice. Vanessa heard it too, because she looked up from sweeping coffee and ceramic shards. "Eric, don't start." "Start what?" "You know what? Your jealousy thing? Tyler's just a friend?" "Right. And I was just a security consultant. We were all just playing our roles in this little suburban drama. I spent the rest of the morning making calls about the cabin, supposedly to arrange utilities and supplies." but really to give myself time to think. Something was wrong with this whole setup. Vanessa had shown zero interest in the cabin for 2 years, had actively complained about it being a waste of money we didn't have. Now suddenly, she wanted to spend our anniversary there, with our daughter along as a chaperone, and Tyler. Jesus, Tyler, the man who'd been circling my wife like a shark for months, suddenly volunteering for manual labor at a remote cabin where my wife wanted to take me for a romantic weekend. I'm not a paranoid man by nature, but 15 years as a cop teaches you to trust your instincts. And right now, every instinct I had was screaming that this was a setup. I called my best friend Leon around noon. Leon Martinez had been my partner back when I was still wearing a badge, before budget cuts and politics had forced me into the private sector. He was one of the few cops who'd made it to retirement with his sense of humor intact. "Eric, my man," Leon's gravelly voice came through the phone. "Please tell me you're calling because you found a job and you're buying lunch." "Not quite. I need to ask you something and I need you to be straight with me." "When am I not straight with you?" "Leon, seriously." The tone in my voice must have gotten through to him because he dropped the jokes. "What's going on?" I told him about the anniversary trip, about Tyler's involvement, about the feeling in my gut that something was very wrong. "So, let me get this straight," Leon said when I finished. "Your wife, who you suspect is cheating on you with this gym rat, wants to take you to an isolated cabin that said gym rat just happened to prepare for you. And you're wondering if this might be a bad idea?" When you put it like that, "Eric, you dumb bastard, of course it's a bad idea. Question is, what are you going to do about it?" That was the question, wasn't it? I could confront Vanessa, but what did I really have? Suspicions, gut feelings, a broken coffee cup, and a wife who'd rather spend time at the gym than at home. "I don't know," I admitted. "Well, figure it out fast. And Eric?" "Yeah? Whatever you decide to do, don't go to that cabin alone." The conversation with Leon stayed with me all afternoon. By the time Chloe got home from school, I'd made up my mind to call the whole thing off. I'd make up some excuse about work, or problems with the cabin, or sudden onset food poisoning. Anything to avoid walking into what felt more and more like a trap. Then Chloe bounced through the front door with her backpack and her gap-toothed grin, and my resolve crumbled. "Daddy, Mom says we're going camping this weekend. Is it true? Are we really going to stay in Uncle Jack's cabin? How do you explain to a 9-year-old that you think her mother might be planning to homicide you? How do you tell her that the family camping trip she's excited about might be a cover for something darker?" "Yeah, sweetheart, we're really going. This is going to be the best weekend ever." She threw her arms around my waist and squeezed tight. "Just the 3 of us. Like a real family. Like a real family. Christ." That night, after Chloe was asleep, I lay in bed listening to Vanessa breathe beside me and tried to convince myself I was being paranoid. Maybe she really did want to reconnect. Maybe Tyler really was just being helpful. Maybe I was letting my insecurities turn a romantic gesture into a conspiracy theory. Maybe pigs could fly. Around midnight, Vanessa's phone buzzed on her nightstand. She rolled over and checked it, the screen lighting up her face in the darkness. I watched through half-closed eyes as she read the message, then typed back a quick response. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen, like she'd sent this same message before. When she was done, she set the phone down and settled back into bed. Within minutes, her breathing had evened out into the rhythm of sleep. I waited another hour, then carefully reached across her to grab her phone. It was locked, of course, but Vanessa had never been good with technology. Her password was Chloe's birthday. The text was from Tyler. "Everything's ready. You sure about this?" Vanessa's response: "It's the only way. He'll never suspect anything." I stared at the screen until the words burned themselves into my retinas. Then I carefully placed the phone back on the nightstand and lay back down, my heart hammering against my ribs. Everything's ready. He'll never suspect anything. "Well, Tyler," I thought as I stared at the ceiling, "you're half right. Friday morning came too soon and not soon enough." I'd spent the past 3 days in a weird state of hypervigilance, watching Vanessa for signs of guilt or nervousness, looking for more evidence of whatever she and Tyler were planning. But my wife had missed her calling as an actress. She was all smiles and excitement about our family getaway, chattering about hiking trails and campfires like she wasn't plotting my demise. I'd managed to get a few more glimpses of her phone over the past few days. Nothing as damning as that first exchange, but enough to confirm that she and Tyler were in regular contact and that whatever they were planning was supposed to happen at the cabin. The smart thing would have been to call it off. The smarter thing would have been to call Leon and have him meet us there. The smartest thing would have been to pack up Chloe and disappear until I could figure out what was really going on. Instead, I loaded our bags into the car and tried to act like a man looking forward to a romantic weekend with his wife. "You seem nervous," Vanessa said, as I threw our cooler into the trunk. She was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, playing the part of the outdoorsy wife perfectly. "Everything okay?" "Just thinking about work," I lied. "You know how it is." "That's exactly why we need this weekend. No work, no distractions, just us." She kissed my cheek, and I had to resist the urge to wipe it off. "This is going to be perfect, Eric, I promise." Chloe came running out of the house with her stuffed elephant and a backpack full of books. "Are we ready? Can we go now?" "We're ready, baby girl," I said, ruffling her dark hair. She had my eyes and Vanessa's smile, and looking at her made my chest tight. Whatever was going to happen this weekend, I had to make sure she was safe. The drive to Brainerd normally took about 2.5 hours. Vanessa had packed sandwiches and snacks, and she kept up a steady stream of chatter about all the fun things we were going to do: hiking, fishing, roasting marshmallows. She painted a picture of family togetherness that would have been heartwarming if I didn't know it was all BS. Chloe was excited for the first hour, asking questions about the cabin and whether we'd see any bears. But kids get bored on long car rides, and eventually she settled into the back seat with her books and her music. That's when things got interesting. We were about an hour outside the city when I saw Chloe watching me in the rearview mirror. Not just looking, but watching with the kind of intensity that meant she was thinking about something serious. When our eyes met, she held up her hand like she was waving, but her fingers were positioned strangely. It took me a second to realize she was signing. Chloe had learned basic sign language in school last year as part of a unit on communication, and she'd been fascinated by it. She'd taught me some of the basics, mostly so we could have secret conversations during boring family dinners. Her fingers spelled out SOMETHINGBURONG. I glanced at Vanessa, who was staring out the passenger window, apparently lost in thought. Then I looked back at Chloe and nodded slightly. She signed again. MOMSCAREDME. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I wanted to pull over right then and demand to know what she meant. But Vanessa would hear everything. Instead, I signed back, TELLMELATER. Chloe nodded and went back to her book, but I could see her watching Vanessa in the reflection of her window. We stopped for gas about 30 miles from the cabin. It was one of those combination gas station and convenience stores that served as the last outpost of civilization before you headed into the deep woods. While Vanessa went inside to use the restroom and buy more snacks we didn't need, I helped Chloe out of the car. "Okay, sweetheart," I said quietly, kneeling down to her level. "What did you mean back there? Why are you scared of Mom?" Chloe looked around to make sure Vanessa wasn't coming back, then pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. "I found this in Mom's purse yesterday when she asked me to get her gum." I unfolded the paper. It was a printout from a website about household poisons. Specifically, it was an article about rat poison and how much it would take to end a full-grown man. Someone had highlighted several passages and made notes in the margins. My blood turned to ice water. "Chloe," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "where did you find this?" "In the zippered part of Mom's purse. There were other papers too, but I could only take one without her noticing." She looked up at me with worried eyes. "Daddy, why does Mom have papers about poison?" Before I could answer, Vanessa came out of the store carrying a bag of chips and wearing a smile that looked painted on. "What are you two whispering about?" she asked brightly. "Just talking about what kind of fish we might catch," I said, quickly folding the paper and slipping it into my pocket. "Right, Chloe?" Chloe nodded, but I could see the fear in her eyes. My 9-year-old daughter had just handed me proof that her mother was planning to poison me, and now she was scared for both of us. "Well, we better get going if we want to make it before dark," Vanessa said. "The last part of the drive can be tricky in low light." I'll bet it can, I thought, especially if you're planning to dump a body somewhere along the way. I got everyone back in the car and started driving, but my mind was racing. The article in my pocket confirmed what I'd already suspected, but it also raised new questions. When was she planning to do it? Tonight? Tomorrow? And what about Chloe? Was she planning to poison her too, or was my daughter supposed to be a witness to my accidental death? I needed to get us out of there, all of us, But we were in the middle of nowhere with no cell service and no backup plan. If I confronted Vanessa now, she might panic and do something desperate. If I didn't confront her, I might not live through the weekend. I was still trying to figure out my next move when Chloe solved the problem for me. "Daddy," she said loudly, "I think I'm going to be sick." I looked at her in the rearview mirror. She was holding her stomach and making the kind of face kids make when they're about to throw up all over your car. "Can you hold it until we get to the cabin?" Vanessa asked, sounding annoyed. "I don't think so," Chloe moaned. "I think I need to go to the hospital." Bless that kid. She was giving me an out. "There's a clinic in Pine River," I said, already looking for a place to turn around. "It's only about 20 minutes back." "Eric, she's just car sick," Vanessa said. "She'll be fine once we get to the cabin and she can get some fresh air." "I'm not taking chances with our daughter's health," I said firmly. "If Chloe says she needs a doctor, we're getting her to a doctor." Vanessa's mask slipped for just a second, and I saw something cold and calculating in her eyes. Then she forced another smile. "Of course, you're right. Chloe's health comes first." I found a place to turn around and headed back towards civilization. In the rearview mirror, I could see Chloe watching her mother with the kind of wariness usually reserved for wild animals. The clinic in Pine River was small but clean, and the nurse on duty was a motherly woman who took one look at Chloe and ushered us into an examination room. While we waited for the doctor, I managed to get Vanessa alone in the hallway. "This is ridiculous," she said. "She's fine. She's just trying to get out of going to the cabin." "Maybe, but I'd rather be safe than sorry." "Eric, we've been planning this weekend for days. Tyler went to all that trouble to get the place ready for us. Tyler will understand." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could practically see the wheels turning in her head. "You don't trust me," she said finally. "Should I?" The question hung in the air between us like a loaded tool. Vanessa opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, colder. "I'm going to call Tyler and let him know we won't be coming." "Good idea." She walked away to make her call, and I went back into the examination room where Chloe was sitting on the paper-covered table, swinging her legs. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" "Better?" she said quietly. "Daddy, are we really going home?" "Yeah, baby girl, we're going home." The relief on her face broke my heart. The doctor confirmed that Chloe was fine, just a little carsick from the winding roads. By the time we got back to the car, it was getting dark, and Vanessa had finished her phone call. "Tyler says he understands," she said, but her voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "He'll close up the cabin for us. That's nice of him." The drive home was tense and quiet. Chloe fell asleep in the back seat, and Vanessa stared out the window without speaking. I could feel the hostility radiating off her like heat from a furnace. When we pulled into our driveway, Vanessa was out of the car before I'd even turned off the engine. "I'm going for a run," she announced. "I need to clear my head." "Van, wait." But she was already jogging down the street, her phone pressed to her ear. Calling Tyler, no doubt, to let him know that their plan had fallen apart. I carried sleeping Chloe into the house and tucked her into bed, then sat in my living room and tried to figure out what the heck I was supposed to do next. I had a piece of paper about poison and a lot of suspicions, but nothing that would hold up in court. I couldn't prove that Vanessa was planning to end me, only that she'd been researching how to do it, but I knew. And now she knew that I knew, which meant that whatever she and Tyler had been planning, they were going to have to come up with a new approach. I was still sitting there when Vanessa came back from her run an hour later. She looked flushed and sweaty, but there was something different about her expression, something resolved. "We need to talk," she said. "Yeah," I agreed. "We do." She sat down across from me, and for a moment we just looked at each other. 15 years of marriage, and it had come to this. Two people who'd once loved each other enough to promise forever, now sitting in the wreckage of all those broken promises. "I know what you think," she said finally, "about Tyler and me." "Do you? You think we're having an affair? Are you?" She was quiet for a long time. Then, "Yes." The word hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd been expecting it. Knowing something and hearing it confirmed are two very different things. "How long?" I asked. 6 months? Maybe 7? And the cabin trip? Another long pause. "Tyler thought it would be a good place to tell you, about us, about the divorce." "That's all? You just wanted to tell me about the divorce?" She looked me straight in the eye. "What else would it be?" I pulled the folded paper from my pocket and set it on the coffee table between us. Vanessa looked down at it, and all the color drained from her face. "Where did you get that?" "Does it matter?" She reached for the paper, but I was faster. "Eric, you don't understand." "Then explain it to me." "I can't. Can't or won't." She stood up abruptly. "I'm going to stay at my sister's tonight. We can talk more when we've both had time to think." "Vanessa!" But she was already heading for the stairs. I heard her moving around in our bedroom, throwing things into a bag. 20 minutes later, she was gone. I sat alone in my living room, holding a piece of paper about poison and wondering how my life had gotten so completely messed up. Outside, it started to rain. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow looked like someone creeping around outside. I checked the locks on all the doors and windows twice, then sat in my kitchen with a baseball bat across my knees, waiting for dawn. Vanessa didn't come home. Saturday morning, I made pancakes for Chloe and tried to act normal while my world fell apart around me. She was quieter than usual, picking at her food and watching me with those serious dark eyes. "Where's Mom?" she asked finally. "She's staying at Aunt Linda's for a few days." "Because of yesterday? Because I got sick?" "No, sweetheart, because Mom and Dad need to figure some things out." Chloe nodded like she understood. But how could she? She was 9 years old. The most complicated thing in her world should have been long division and whether to wear the pink shirt or the blue one. "Daddy," she said quietly, "are you and Mom getting divorced?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. "I don't know, baby girl. Maybe." "Is it because of Coach Tyler?" I nearly choked on my coffee. "What do you know about Coach Tyler?" "I see things," she said with the matter-of-fact tone that kids use when they're stating the obvious. "Mom talks to him all the time. She smiles different when she talks to him. Smart kid, too smart." "Yeah," I said. "It's because of Coach Tyler." After breakfast, I called Leon and asked him to come over. I needed someone to talk to, someone who could help me figure out what to do next. When I told him about the poison article and the failed cabin trip, he was quiet for a long time. "Jesus, Eric, you think she was really planning to end you?" "I don't know, maybe. Or maybe she was just researching it, thinking about it. Either way, it's not exactly the kind of thing you find in your wife's purse by accident. You need to call the police." "And tell them what?" "My wife has an article about rat poison?" "That's not a crime, Leon. Heck, maybe she really does have a rat problem." "In her purse?" "I know how it sounds, but without more evidence, there's nothing they can do." Leon rubbed his graying beard. "So what's your plan?" "I don't have one. I'm making this up as I go along." That afternoon, while Chloe was at a friend's house, I decided to do some investigating of my own. Elite Fitness was closed on Sundays, but I knew Tyler lived in an apartment above the gym. I also knew that Vanessa's car had been parked in the gym's lot when I drove by earlier. I parked across the street and settled in to wait. I felt like a stalker, sitting there watching my wife's boyfriend's apartment. But I needed to know what I was dealing with. Were they planning something else? Had they given up on whatever they'd been plotting? Was I safe, or was I just delaying the inevitable? Around 4 o'clock, Vanessa came out of the building. She looked around nervously, then got in her car and drove away. 10 minutes later, Tyler emerged. He was a big guy, probably 6'2", and built like the linebacker he'd been in college. The kind of man who made other men feel inadequate just by existing. He got into a black pickup truck and drove in the opposite direction from Vanessa. I waited a few minutes, then followed him. Tyler drove to a hardware store on the outskirts of town. I watched from the parking lot as he went inside, then came out 20 minutes later carrying a bag. From where I was sitting, I couldn't see what he'd bought, but the timing seemed suspicious. I followed him back to the gym, then drove home to pick up Chloe. She was quiet during dinner, and I could tell she was worried about the changes in our family. After she went to bed, I sat in my home office and tried to think like a cop again. If Vanessa and Tyler were planning to end me, they would have had to adapt their plan after yesterday's failed trip. The cabin had been perfect, isolated, no witnesses, easy to make it look like an accident. Now they'd have to come up with something else. But what? I was still thinking about it when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Vanessa's number. "Eric, we need to talk." "I'm listening." "Not on the phone. Can you meet me somewhere?" Every instinct I had screamed that this was a bad idea. "Where?" "The park on Elm Street, the one where we used to take Chloe when she was little." "A public place." That was good. Harder to homicide someone in a public park, even at night. "When?" Now! Please, Eric. This is important. I looked in on Chloe, who was fast asleep, then called Mrs. Peterson next door and asked her to keep an ear out. She was a retired teacher who'd always been fond of Chloe, and she agreed without asking too many questions. The park was empty when I arrived, just a few streetlights casting pools of yellow light on the playground equipment. Vanessa was sitting on a bench near the swings, and she stood up when she saw me coming. "Thank you for coming," she said. "What do you want, Van?" She looked tired, older somehow than she had just 2 days ago. "I want to explain about that article you found." "I'm listening." "It wasn't for you." I stared at her. "What?" "The poison article. It wasn't for you, Eric. It was for Tyler." "You were planning to poison Tyler?" "His wife, Michelle." Vanessa sat back down on the bench and put her head in her hands. "She found out about us. She was threatening to ruin both of us, destroy Tyler's business, take everything. Tyler said it was the only way. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck." "You were going to help him homicide his wife?" "Not homicide, just make her sick, scare her, make her back off." "Vanessa, do you hear yourself right now? Do you understand what you're saying?" "I know how it sounds, but you don't know Michelle. She's vindictive, Eric. She would have destroyed Tyler just to hurt me. So you decided to poison her instead." "We weren't really going to do it. We were just exploring options." I sat down on the bench beside her, trying to process what she'd just told me. "And the cabin trip?" Tyler wanted to talk strategy, figure out how to handle Michelle without anyone getting hurt. "With our daughter there?" "Chloe would have been hiking or fishing. She wouldn't have heard anything." I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and realized I didn't know her at all. The woman I'd married, the mother of my child, was sitting here calmly explaining how she'd been planning to poison another human being. Jesus Christ, Vanessa. What happened to you? "I fell in love," she said simply. "Real love, Eric. The kind that makes you do crazy things. Crazy things like commit homicide. We weren't going to end her. Rat poison, Vanessa. You were researching rat poison. That stuff doesn't just make people sick, it ends them." She was quiet for a long time. Then, maybe that would have been for the best. I stood up so fast I nearly fell over. "I'm done. We're done. I want you out of the house, away from Chloe, away from me. I'm filing for divorce on Monday." "Eric, wait. No, there's nothing left to say. You chose Tyler over your family, and now you're talking about getting rid of his wife. I don't know who you are anymore, but you're not the woman I married." I started walking away, but Vanessa called after me. "You can't keep Chloe from me. She's my daughter, too." I turned back. "Watch me." The drive home gave me time to think, and by the time I pulled into my driveway, I'd made several decisions. First, I was going to call a lawyer in the morning and start divorce proceedings. Second, I was going to document everything: the poison article, the affair, tonight's conversation. Third, I was going to make sure Tyler's wife, Michelle, knew what her husband and my wife had been planning. But first, I was going to make sure my daughter was safe. I checked on Chloe, who was still sleeping peacefully, then went to my bedroom and started packing Vanessa's things. I wanted her stuff out of my house, out of my life. As I was emptying her dresser drawers, I found her backup phone hidden under a stack of sweaters. The phone wasn't locked. Vanessa had never been paranoid about security, one of the many ways we were different. I scrolled through the text messages between her and Tyler, and what I found made my blood run cold. Tyler: "Plan B is riskier, but it might be our only option now." Vanessa: "What did you have in mind?" Tyler: "House fire, electrical problem, happens all the time in old houses." Vanessa: "What about Chloe?" Tyler: "She'll be at school. Just Eric." Vanessa: "When?" Tyler: "Tomorrow. I already bought the supplies." I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. They weren't giving up, they were escalating, and they were planning to burn down my house with me in it. I immediately called emergency. "Emergency? What's your emergency?" "My name is Eric Dorsey. I need to report a planned arson. Someone is planning to burn down my house tomorrow." The dispatcher took my information and promised to send officers right away. While I waited for them to arrive, I called Leon. "They're going to try to burn down my house," I told him without preamble. "What? Who?" "Vanessa and Tyler. I found text messages. They're planning to make it look like an electrical fire." Jesus Christ, Eric, where are you now? "At home, waiting for the police." "Get out of there. Take Chloe and get out now. The police are coming." "Eric, listen to me. If they're planning to burn your house down tomorrow, what makes you think they won't move up the timeline? Get Chloe and get somewhere safe, now. He was right. I ran upstairs and gently shook Chloe awake. Sweetheart, we need to go. Where? She mumbled, still half asleep. To Uncle Leon's house. We're going to have a sleepover. She was too tired to argue. I helped her get dressed and packed a quick bag with some clothes and her stuffed elephant. As we were leaving, I saw headlights turning into my street. But it wasn't the police. It was Tyler's black pickup truck. Get in the car, I told Chloe urgently. Right now. I strapped her into the back seat and started the engine just as Tyler's truck pulled into my driveway. In the glow of my porch light, I could see him getting out of the truck carrying what looked like a gas can. Son of a witch. They weren't waiting until tomorrow. I backed out of the driveway fast, tires squealing. Tyler looked up, surprised, then ran toward his truck. I didn't wait to see if he was going to follow us. I just drove. Daddy, what's happening? Chloe asked from the back seat. Everything's going to be okay, sweetheart. We're just going to stay with Uncle Leon tonight. In the rearview mirror, I could see Tyler's headlights following us. The next few minutes were the longest of my life. I drove through residential streets, trying to stay in well-lit areas where there would be witnesses if Tyler tried something stupid. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel, and I kept checking to make sure Chloe was okay. Finally, I saw the flashing lights of police cars heading in the opposite direction, toward my house. I pulled over and flagged them down. I'm Eric Dorsey, I told the first officer who approached my car. I'm the one who called about the planned arson. Sir, we need you to follow us back to your house. There's a man with a gas can in my driveway. Black pickup truck, license plate. I rattled off Tyler's plate number, which I'd memorized during my surveillance. The officer spoke into his radio, then looked back at me. Sir, we're going to need you to come with us to give a statement. Is there somewhere safe your daughter can stay? I called Leon, who met us at the police station. While Chloe waited with him in the lobby, I told the detectives everything. The affair, the poison article, the text messages about the house fire, Tyler showing up with the gas can. We arrested Mr. Brandt at your house, Detective Kim told me. She was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who reminded me of some of the better cops I'd worked with. He had gasoline and what appears to be an improvised incendiary device. What about my wife? We're looking for her now. Do you have any idea where she might be? I gave them Linda's address and Vanessa's phone numbers. Then I sat in that sterile interview room and tried to process the fact that my wife had been planning to burn down our house with me inside it. Mr. Dorsey, Detective Kim said gently, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Did you suspect that your wife might be capable of something like this? I thought about the past few months, the distance between us, the secretiveness, the way she'd changed. Had I known? Deep down, had I sensed that the woman I'd married was capable of homicide? No, I said finally. I knew she was having an affair. I suspected they might be planning something, but this? No, I never thought she'd try to end me. People do crazy things when they're desperate, Detective Kim said. The good news is that you and your daughter are safe, and we have enough evidence to charge both of them. What happens now? Now, you go home to your daughter and try to put your life back together. Easier said than done. Leon drove Chloe and me back to his apartment that night. There was no way I was going back to my house, not yet. The thought of Tyler standing in my driveway with a gas can, ready to burn down everything I'd worked for, made me sick to my stomach. You can stay here as long as you need, Leon said as he made up the couch for me. Chloe was already asleep in his spare bedroom, exhausted by the day's events. Thanks, man. I don't know what I would have done without you. You would have figured it out. You always do. Leon cracked open a beer and handed it to me. So what's the plan now? I don't know. Wait for the lawyers, I guess. Try to explain to my daughter why her mother tried to homicide her father. They'll both go to prison for this, you know. Attempted arson, conspiracy to commit homicide. They're looking at serious time. I took a long drink of beer and tried to feel satisfied about that. Justice served, bad guys caught, good guy wins. But all I felt was empty. 15 years of marriage, and it had come to this. Eric, Leon said carefully, there's something you need to know. What? I did some checking on Tyler Brandt today. Guy's got a history. What kind of history? Domestic violence. His ex-wife filed charges 3 years ago, but dropped them later. Probably got scared. Jesus. There's more. His gym is in financial trouble, has been for months. He owes money to some very unpleasant people. I stared at him. You think this was about money? Think about it. Your wife leaves you, marries Tyler, and suddenly she's got access to your life insurance policy. House burns down, you die. She gets the insurance money, and Tyler gets a fresh start. The pieces clicked into place in my head. Son of a witch. Yeah, I spent the rest of the night lying on Leon's couch, staring at the ceiling and thinking about how completely I'd been played. Vanessa hadn't just fallen in love with another man. She'd fallen in love with a con artist who saw her as a meal ticket. The next morning, Detective Kim called to tell me that they'd arrested Vanessa at her sister's house. Both she and Tyler were being held without bail pending their arraignment. I need to ask you about something we found in Mr. Brandt's apartment, she said. Did you know that your wife had taken out a life insurance policy on you 6 months ago? What? $500,000. She's listed as the sole beneficiary. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. No, I didn't know. The timing is interesting. Right around when their affair started. Yeah, it is. After I hung up, I sat in Leon's kitchen and tried to figure out how I'd missed so many signs. The working out, the new clothes, the secretiveness. I'd chalked it all up to a midlife crisis. I'd never imagined that my wife was planning to cash in on my death. Daddy? Chloe appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas. Are we going home today? Not yet, sweetheart. Maybe tomorrow. Is Mom in jail? How do you explain something like this to a 9-year-old? How do you tell her that her mother is a person who tried to take a life? Mom made some very bad choices, I said carefully. She's going to have to face the consequences of those choices. Chloe nodded solemnly. Is she going to prison? Probably. Good, she said, and the matter-of-fact way she said it broke my heart. That afternoon, I met with a lawyer named Sarah Chen, who specialized in family law and criminal cases. She was a small, intense woman who got straight to the point. Your wife is looking at attempted homicide, conspiracy, and arson charges, she said. Her boyfriend is looking at the same, plus extortion and fraud. They're going to prison, Mr. Dorsey. The question is, for how long? What about custody of my daughter? Given the circumstances, I don't think that's going to be an issue. Your wife tried to end you. No judge in the world is going to give her custody rights. That was something, at least. There's something else you should know, Sarah said. Tyler Brandt's wife, Michelle, has filed for divorce. She's also suing both your wife and her husband for emotional distress and alienation of affection. Can she do that? Oh, yes. And given what they were planning to do to her, she'll probably win. Over the next few days, the story made the local news. Suburban wife and lover plot to homicide husband was the headline that ran in the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. My phone rang constantly with reporters wanting interviews, but I ignored them all. The last thing Chloe needed was to see her family's destruction splashed across the front page. The arraignment was scheduled for Thursday. I didn't plan to attend, but Sarah thought it would be good for me to be there. It will show the judge that you're taking this seriously, she said, that you're not just going to disappear and let them bargain their way out of this. So Thursday morning, I put on my best suit and went to watch my wife and her boyfriend get formally charged with trying to homicide me. The courthouse was packed. Apparently, attempted homicide by suburban housewives was big news in Minneapolis. I sat in the back row and watched as Vanessa and Tyler were let in wearing orange jumpsuits and handcuffs. Vanessa looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her face was pale, and she'd lost weight. When she saw me in the courtroom, she started crying. Tyler, on the other hand, looked pissed off. He kept glaring at me like this was all my fault, like I'd somehow forced him to plan my homicide. The charges were read: attempted homicide in the first degree, conspiracy to commit homicide, attempted arson, insurance fraud. Both defendants pleaded not guilty, which was expected. Your Honor, Tyler's lawyer said, my client maintains his innocence. This is all a misunderstanding blown out of proportion by a jealous husband. I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. A misunderstanding. Right. The judge set trial dates for both defendants and denied bail. As they were being led away, Vanessa turned and looked at me one more time. I'm sorry, she mouthed. Too little, too late. That afternoon, I finally went back to my house. The police had released the crime scene, and I needed to assess the damage. There wasn't much, physically. Tyler had been caught before he could actually start the fire, but emotionally, the place felt poisoned. I walked through the rooms where I'd lived with Vanessa for 10 years, where we'd brought Chloe home from the hospital, where we'd celebrated birthdays and anniversaries, and all the small moments that make up a marriage. Now all I could think about was how she'd been planning to burn it all down with me inside. I packed up more of Vanessa's belongings and donated them to charity. I didn't want anything of hers in my house anymore. That evening, I got an unexpected visitor. Michelle Brandt stood on my doorstep looking like she'd been through heck. She was a pretty woman in her early 40s, but her eyes were red from crying, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Mr. Dorsey? I'm Michelle Brandt, Tyler's wife." "I know who you are. Come in." She sat in my living room and twisted her wedding ring around her finger. "I wanted to apologize." "For what?" "For not knowing, for not stopping him, if I'd known what he was planning." "It's not your fault," I said. "You're as much a victim in this as I am. They were going to end me too, you know, after you. The police found plans in Tyler's apartment. He was going to poison me and make it look like I'd taken my own life." I stared at her. Jesus. Apparently I was worth more dead than alive. Tyler had life insurance policies on both of us. She laughed bitterly. "I thought he was just being responsible." We sat in silence for a while, two people whose lives had been destroyed by the same con man. "What are you going to do now?" I asked. "Divorce him, take whatever's left of his assets, try to rebuild my life." She looked at me. "What about you?" "Same thing, I guess." After Michelle left, I sat in my empty house and tried to figure out what came next. The trial wouldn't be for months. Vanessa and Tyler would probably take plea deals to avoid life sentences. Chloe and I would have to testify, relive the whole nightmare in front of a jury. But we'd survived. That was something. My phone rang around 10 o'clock. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. "Hello? Eric, it's me." Vanessa, calling from jail. "What do you want?" "I need to talk to you, please. Just 5 minutes. We have nothing to talk about." "It's about Chloe." "Please, Eric. I'm her mother." Against my better judgment, I stayed on the line. "I know you hate me," she said, her voice thick with tears. "I know I've destroyed everything, but please don't turn Chloe against me." "I don't have to turn her against you, Vanessa. You did that all by yourself." "She's 9 years old. She doesn't understand. She understands that you tried to end her father. She understands that you chose a con man over your own family. What else does she need to understand?" "I never meant for any of this to happen." "But it did happen. You made it happen. Tyler said it would be quick, painless. He said you wouldn't suffer." I hung up the phone. Some conversations aren't worth having. The trial began 6 weeks later on a cold Monday morning in November. Despite Sarah's predictions, neither Vanessa nor Tyler had taken a plea deal. Tyler's lawyer was apparently convinced he could beat the charges, and Vanessa had gotten swept up in his delusion. Fine by me. I wanted them both to face the full consequences of what they'd tried to do. The prosecution's case was solid. They had the text messages, the poison research, the life insurance policies, and Tyler caught red-handed with gasoline and an incendiary device. The defense's strategy seemed to be to blame everything on the other defendant and hope the jury bought it. I testified on the second day. Walking into that courtroom and seeing Vanessa sitting at the defendant's table was surreal. She was wearing a conservative blue dress and had her hair pulled back in a way that made her look younger, more innocent. Her lawyer was clearly going for the misguided wife led astray angle. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Janet Morrison, walked me through the events leading up to the attempted arson. I told the jury about finding the poison research, about the suspicious cabin trip, about the text messages planning my death. "Mr. Dorsey," Morrison said, "did you ever suspect that your wife was capable of homicide?" "No," I said honestly. "I knew our marriage was in trouble. I suspected she was having an affair, but I never imagined she would try to end me." "What about the life insurance policy she took out on you without your knowledge?" "I didn't know about it until after my arrest. $500,000 with her as the sole beneficiary." I could see some of the jurors shaking their heads. Taking out a secret life insurance policy on your husband 6 months before trying to homicide him doesn't look good to a jury. Tyler's lawyer tried to make me look like a paranoid, controlling husband during cross-examination. "Mr. Dorsey, isn't it true that you followed my client to a hardware store and then to his apartment?" "Yes." "Isn't it true that you went through your wife's personal belongings without her permission?" "Yes." "And you installed surveillance equipment in your own home to spy on your family?" "No, that's not true." "But you did monitor your wife's phone calls and text messages?" "After I found evidence that she was planning to harm me, yes." The lawyer made me sound like a stalker. but I could tell the jury wasn't buying it. Hard to paint someone as the bad guy when their wife tried to burn them alive. Vanessa testified in her own defense, which Sarah told me was a mistake. The jury's already seen the evidence, she said during a recess. Her only hope was to stay quiet and let her lawyer try to create reasonable doubt. By testifying, she's giving the prosecution a chance to tear her apart. She was right. Vanessa's testimony was a disaster. She tried to claim that she'd never intended to hurt me, that Tyler had manipulated her, that the whole thing was his idea. But the text messages told a different story. The jury could see her actively participating in the planning, discussing timing and methods. The worst moment came when Morrison asked her about the life insurance policy. "Mrs. Dorsey, you took out a $500,000 life insurance policy on your husband without his knowledge. Why?" "Tyler suggested it. He said it was good financial planning." "And when did he make this suggestion?" "I don't remember exactly." "Let me refresh your memory. According to the insurance company's records, you applied for this policy on March 15th. According to your phone records, you and Mr. Brandt began your intimate relationship on March 10th. 5 days later, you're taking out life insurance on your husband. Quite a coincidence, don't you think?" Vanessa's face crumpled. "It wasn't like that." "What was it like, Mrs. Dorsey?" "I don't know. I was confused. I thought I loved him." "Loved him enough to homicide your husband?" "I never wanted Eric to die." "But you researched rat poison. You planned to take him to an isolated cabin. You discussed burning down his house with him inside. If you didn't want him to die, Mrs. Dorsey, what exactly were you planning to do?" Vanessa broke down crying on the witness stand. It should have been pathetic, but all I felt was disgust. She was crying for herself, not for what she'd almost done to me and Chloe. Tyler's testimony was even worse. He tried to claim that the whole thing was Vanessa's idea, that she'd seduced him and manipulated him into helping her. The jury clearly didn't believe a word of it. Chloe didn't have to testify, thankfully. Sarah had argued that her testimony wasn't necessary given the physical evidence, and the judge agreed. My daughter had been through enough. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all charges for both defendants. Vanessa got 25 years to life. Tyler got life without the possibility of parole, thanks to his prior domestic violence conviction and the fact that he was the ringleader of the plot. I felt nothing when the verdicts were read. No satisfaction, no relief, no closure, just emptiness. After the trial, the media attention died down and life slowly returned to something resembling normal. Chloe and I moved to a new house across town, somewhere without memories of Vanessa. I started dating again, carefully, and eventually met a woman named Rebecca who understood that I came with baggage and a 9-year-old daughter who'd been through trauma. Chloe started seeing a therapist to help her process what had happened. She was resilient, the way kids often are, but she had nightmares sometimes and trust issues that would probably take years to resolve. I never visited Vanessa in prison. She wrote me letters for the first year, apologizing and begging for forgiveness, asking to see Chloe. I threw them all away, unopened. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Tyler died in prison 3 years later, stabbed by another inmate in a fight over cigarettes. I didn't go to his funeral. Michelle Brandt and I stayed in touch. She rebuilt her life, started her own business, eventually remarried a man who actually loved her. We had lunch occasionally, 2 survivors of the same disaster checking in on each other. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't figured it out?" she asked me once. "Every day," I said. "I think about that cabin," she said. "How isolated it was, how easy it would have been for them to make you disappear." "But they didn't." "No, they didn't." 5 years after the trial, I got a call from the prison. Vanessa was dying. Ovarian cancer, stage 4. She had maybe 6 months left, and she wanted to see Chloe one last time. Chloe was 14 by then, old enough to make her own decision. I explained the situation and let her choose. "I don't want to see her," she said without hesitation. "She's not my mother anymore. She gave birth to you, sweetheart. That makes her your mother no matter what else she did." "No," Chloe said firmly. "A mother protects her children. She doesn't try to homicide their father. Rebecca is more of a mother to me than Vanessa ever was." Rebecca and I had married the year before. She'd been patient with both of us, understanding about the baggage we carried, loving enough to take on a damaged man and his traumatized daughter. "Are you sure?" I asked Chloe. "I'm sure." So we didn't visit. Vanessa died alone in the prison hospital 6 months later. I didn't go to her funeral either. I thought I'd feel something when she died. Relief, maybe, or sadness for what we'd lost. But all I felt was tired. Tired of carrying the weight of her betrayal. Tired of explaining to people why my wife had tried to end me. Tired of being the man whose suburban life had imploded in such a spectacular fashion. But I was alive. Chloe was alive. We'd built a new life, a better life, with people who actually loved us. That had to count for something. The night after Vanessa's funeral, I sat in my backyard with a beer and thought about the anniversary trip that had started it all. If Chloe hadn't gotten sick, if we'd actually made it to that cabin, would I be dead now? Would Chloe be an orphan, raised by the woman who'd taken her father's life? I'd never know for sure, but I suspected that my smart, observant daughter had saved both our lives that day when she pretended to be carsick. She'd seen something that scared her and found a way to get us out of danger. "Dad?" Chloe appeared in the doorway, now a teenager with my eyes and her own stubborn streak. "You okay?" "Yeah, sweetheart, just thinking about her, about us, about how lucky we are." She came out and sat beside me on the porch steps. "Do you ever miss her? The way she used to be, I mean, before Tyler?" It was a good question. Did I miss the woman I'd married? The one who'd existed before greed and infatuation turned her into a would-be butcher? "Sometimes," I said honestly. "I miss the idea of her, the family I thought we were. But not the real her. No, not the real her." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out over our quiet suburban street. Somewhere across town, Tyler's grave was growing weeds. Somewhere else, Vanessa's ashes were scattered in a place I'd never see. But we were here. We were alive. We were together. And that was enough. Rebecca appeared in the doorway. "Dinner's ready," she called. "Coming," I said, standing up and brushing off my jeans. Chloe ran ahead into the house, eager for whatever Rebecca had cooked. I followed more slowly, thinking about second chances and new beginnings and the strange ways life can surprise you. My first marriage had ended in attempted homicide and betrayal. My second marriage was built on honesty and genuine love. The contrast wasn't lost on me. As I walked into my house, our house, I could hear Chloe and Rebecca laughing about something in the kitchen. The sound made me smile. This was what a real family sounded like. This was what love looked like when it wasn't poisoned by greed and selfishness. I'd survived my wife's attempt to homicide me, and I'd built something better from the ashes of that betrayal. Not a bad ending for a story that had started with an anniversary trip to rock bottom.